produced at this point in my life 5 different podcasts on birth and multiple education videos on it. At this point, give me the gloves. Where's the baby? I'm getting it. Because, like, I can figure it out. I have no business knowing that much information. I just don't. But I do now. Welcome to The Dive, the official podcast of Wavestream Media. I'm Cece.
And I'm Mark. We're the founders of Wavestream, and this is where we slow down, talk it out, and dive into the stuff that deserves a little more airtime.
One topic, one story, or one person per episode. Whether it's something we're building, something we're questioning, or something we just can't stop thinking about.
Let's dive in.
Well, Mark, let's dive in, shall we?
Yeah. I mean, nowhere to start but at the beginning, right? So welcome everyone to the first episode of our new podcast. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I am really excited for this first episode because we're going to just kind of, get into the lore, right? We're going to talk a little bit about how we got here.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into the lore. We've had a lot of firsts recently, so it only makes sense to go back and talk about some of the other firsts. I think a lot of people, they've seen us working together over the years now, but I don't think people really know how far back the lore truly goes.
Yeah, and it's such a weird thing because I think about, we've known each other for probably like 5 or 6 years now, and I
think more than that. I think 6 or 7, because it's the year of our Lord 2025.
We met, I guess it was January of 2020, I think it was. I think we met in that last semester before we graduated.
Okay, well then maybe you're right. Maybe it is 5 years.
I mean, that's the mark of a good friendship, right? Yes. It feels like we've known each other forever.
I don't remember a time before you were around, Mark.
Well, I mean, and it's such a weird thing too, right? Like we met each other and then 3 months later the world ended, right?
Yeah, that is true. And then we came back together. So let's stop hinting at what happened. So we met, I guess, as you say, in January in 2020, working on Carolina Connection, UNC Hussman School of Media and Journalism's premier audio newscast. Thank you. We actually did win several awards. I think that semester we both won an award for Edward R. Murrow Excellence in Audio Newscast. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's on my LinkedIn. National award, baby. Congrats. 5 years later, you found out you won. Add it to your LinkedIn so people know you're a winner. But at that point, I'd been working on the show for, I guess, a year, maybe a little more, 3 or 4 semesters. And I'd started out as a reporter, which I was studying broadcast media and broadcast news. I discovered in my 4 years there that I did not want to be a journalist. I still got the degree, though. I guess I could always do that if I wanted, but I found it to be a little bit too stressful and sad all the time for my personality. And I had worked my way up from reporter to one of the producers, so I was tech producer when you got there. And I remember this is Mark. He's working. You were studying something else, right? You weren't in news?
So I was a part of the communications department. My major was in communications and media production. And over the previous year before that semester, I had been taking classes in audio production. A lot of it was mostly for film and TV and also music production. And I'd kind of taken all of the courses that were really available for me within the department. And
he said, I'm too good. I knew too much. They had to find somewhere to put me. I didn't know where to go.
Well, I'll let you, gas me up like that a little bit, as the expert I am. But no, I went to the head of the department, whose name was also Mark, so we automatically had that instant connection.
Right.
It's great. So I went to him and I asked him what other opportunities would there be for me to just kind of round out in my last semester, and he actually suggested,
"Sir, I'm bored. I need another class."
Right? Give me something to do. And that's when he sent me over to Carolina Connections, and it was the sort of situation where I joined the class as basically just a technical contributor because I wasn't there to really write any news stories. I was there to sort of help the journalists with their news packages, kind of show them how like mixing audio works, how the finer points of using Audition for editing and cutting and that sort of stuff. And it was honestly a lot of fun. Like I really liked like going to the show on Saturday, even though like waking up early on a
Was
Saturday morning
hard.
was not my fave, certainly not.
Yeah.
But it was cool going there and like doing like the live production because I did student radio. I was a part of WXYC while I was at UNC, and it was just like such a more casual thing doing that versus like the more like the tight flow of the
Right.
newscast.
Yeah, I think I didn't work extensively on other shows in the school, but every once in a while I would pop in, and I definitely think, I mean, the reason I stayed with Carolina Connection for so long was because it was just really fun to make. And I remember when you came in, Adam, the producer, was like, the teacher, he was like, hey, so this is Mark. He's here to help with tech stuff. And I was at that point the technical producer of the show, and I was like, cool. Here's what we do, I guess. I think there were some things that I could teach you workflow wise and kind of how it worked for news and radio and things like that. But beyond that point, it was clear to me very quickly that your expertise was severely higher than my expertise.
Well, the thing that I remember very distinctly about it is, sure, I felt like I knew more about these sort of more traditional things in terms of like how to use EQ really well and how to do like compression, like the sort of things that you would do in like Pro Tools or you would do in Audition. But I think that your mastery of Audition was more than mine at the time. Like I remember you were showing me how to use like the Essential Sounds panel to like auto duck the music and like how easy it was to do that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Those sort of things just like never crossed my mind at the time. I was very used to doing things the hard way.
Yeah, if there's one thing about me is I will try to look for the most efficient way to get something done. My head of school in high school told me one time, CC works smarter, not harder. And I have stuck with that forever in an educational sense and a professional sense. There's got to be a smarter way to do something.
I want to take a moment here. I want to ask a selfish question, and
Sure.
this might be a little bit more for me than for the listeners out there, but we were talking before the show about how we don't really know like tons of like the deep lore about one another
Mhm.
past, our time at Carolina. And so I actually want to hear about like, was there anything in high school that kind of like got you down like the audio or the journalism path, or if not, was there just like any like fun story from high school that like you always think about?
Actually, yes. So I went to a high school called Longleaf School of the Arts. I was part of the first class to ever graduate from there. So I went there from the first year it opened to when I graduated. So I was there for 3 years. It was a small school relatively. I mean, there were 20 people in my graduating class. My brother graduated from there actually last month, and there were 100 people in his class. So it's grown significantly since then.
And shout out Walt.
Yeah, shout out
Congratulations.
to Walt. Go NC State Walt Pack. But when I was there, it was, a small school in a small building in downtown Raleigh, and it was a really cool experience. And because it was the beginning of the school, it was a lot of just kind of everybody was figuring out how the school was going to work and operate and what it was going to be like, kind of all together at the same time, which was really collaborative and cool. And I remember they would send out these weekly newsletters of like what was happening that week at school. And I was like, what? Like, this is boring. There's got to be a more fun way to tell this to people. So I went to the head of school and I was like, what if you started sending me these things? And I just recorded a video and it was the news. And we could just air it every Tuesday at this time because we had an extra 10 minutes in one class every Tuesday. We can air it and then everybody can watch it and people will definitely know what's happening instead of asking you about it because they didn't read. And it would be fun to do. So I started doing the news. And to some of my classmates' enjoyment and to some of their dismay, because I remember distinctly there was one girl who was like, said to the class, I can't believe we have to sit and watch her every Tuesday, which it is what it is.
That's crazy. You like Disney Channel movie got yourself onto like the school bulletin and just like made it out of nowhere.
Pretty much, yeah. But I was like, There has to be a more fun way to deliver this to people. And I loved watching YouTube videos and things like that at that time. That was kind of a big YouTube era like 2014, 15, 16.
Right.
So I just started making them myself. And then I guess the next semester, two of my friends, although I don't know if they were really my friends at that point, but they became my friends, approached me and were like, we want to do this with you. Like, we think that this could be really cool. Because initially I was just like emailing it to people and they were playing it. So then we ended up making a YouTube channel and we got a green screen and like it was a real news production. And all of those videos are still on the internet actually because we can't take them down. Nobody knows how to get into the account. So they are all still available.
You should put those on your LinkedIn over there next to your journalism awards.
Right. Honestly, I think we did some good journalism there. We had a segment of the building that we were in was incredibly old and decrepit. I think Marbles owns the building now and they use it for storage. Like, it was old. And because of that, things would just break like all the time. There's something broken all the time. And so I came up with this idea to have this segment called Breaking News. And instead of like things that were urgently happening, it was something in the school that was broken. And so it was like, the ceiling tiles are falling down in the bathroom. This window is shattered up on this third floor. Like, and it was hilarious. Like, the breaking news, I think the last episode we did, it was the seniors breaking up with the school. Like, it was so much fun. But at a certain point, they did tell me, like, you have to stop publicly showing people all of the broken things in the school. They're like, this is making us look bad and like this seems unsafe, so like you do have to stop doing this. And I was like, I'm sorry, this is journalism, people.
Yeah,
I don't know what you want. If you don't want people to know it's broken, fix it.
Yeah.
So I guess that was a long story, but that's how I got into the news. I just had fun doing that and decided that that's what I was going to do.
I mean, long stories are the best ones.
Yeah, sometimes. Depends.
That's fair.
Depends on who's telling it and if you've heard it before.
Right. No, I get that.
Yeah, but I know some of this lore, but I want to hear about how you got to Carolina too, because I know actually secretly, not so secretly, you're a bit of a chef. So I want you to explain some of that past before you got to school.
Yeah, for sure. So I graduated high school in 2010. And I
Grandpa.
yeah, I know. Old man alert for sure. The fun thing was like in high school, I was very much into like all of this sort of like media production stuff. Like I went to Southeast Raleigh Magnet High School. And like while I was there, I took classes in like graphic design. So I used like Photoshop and Illustrator. We took like video classes. I did like some music production classes. I was really interested in all that sort of stuff, but there was a lot of like rhetoric, not from any of like my own mentors specifically, but from people saying, it's a really competitive field and really hard to get a job in. And
right. If you do it, you're going to be broke.
Right. Yeah. And like I didn't really want to spend a bunch of money on college. And at the time I was like cooking at my dad's restaurant and I really liked cooking. It was something I was really passionate about. And so like after about like a year at Wake Tech, I was like, I'm just going to go and work in restaurants and like build a culinary career. I did that for a long time. It was a good time, but it's a very difficult field to be in for a long time. I think that, if you've ever read Kitchen Confidentials by Anthony Bourdain, a lot of that stuff's true. There's like, strong subcultures of like, alcohol and drug abuse and sexual abuse. And it's just not really congruent with my own lifestyle. So right. After, 8 years or so of like cooking, I decided to go back to school and I was at Wake Tech for a while. I wanted to major in communications at Wake Tech because I was like, even if I get a useless degree, I want to learn how to like communicate with people better. If I never get a job in the field, I would really like to learn how to just like talk to people better. And yeah, like I did well at Wake Tech, ended up coming to Carolina and doing comms classes. And I mean, I was in rhetoric for a good while because that's, again, kind of what my thoughts about comm were. But when I got to Carolina, I, like yourself, if I'm not mistaken, was a Carolina Covenant Scholar.
Yes.
Which was basically, not a full ride, but kind of a full ride.
I mean, but you didn't have to pay for anything, but right. You did have to be poor.
And you did have to work on campus. Yes. And so the job that I got on campus was in the digital, what was it, the DLC, the Digital Literacy and Communications Lab in the English department in Greenlaw Hall. And I got the job there doing video. And I had originally signed up to do social media for them. I thought that's kind of where all the money was at. But they're
Right.
like, we need somebody to do video with us. And I was like, I haven't done video since I was like in high school 8 years ago. And, kind of remember how to do stuff. And they're like, we don't have anybody else to do it. So we need you to do it. And then
How
kind of
many
just
times
like,
has that happened to you? How many times have you been that we need somebody to do it and you're here and you're going to be the one who does it? I feel like that's not the first or last time somebody said that to you.
I certainly have this magnetism for thankless work. It just comes right to me.
Oh, but anyway, continue. So you're doing video for the first time in 8 years.
Yeah, back on the grind, and they had a podcast they needed help with too, and so that was like my first podcast experience, and ended up just like doing really well in it all. Like I think it was there that I really latched onto this idea that like video's good, but if it doesn't sound good too, it's not a good video. And like
Yeah.
the bar to clear with these people was very low. Like the videos they were doing before were like terrible webcam videos with awful angles and can't really understand what people are saying. And so small minor adjustments made everything so much better and made a lot of happy folks in the English department.
Yeah, that's cool. I forgot that or maybe I did never really know that you had to have a job on campus. I did have a job on campus. I worked at the planetarium doing science presentations in the theater, but I guess I didn't know that that was required. I just took astronomy and thought it would be fun to teach kids about space.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe it was the sort of thing where it like changed. Maybe it's like you only had to do it for a certain amount of time. Like it's probably different too for like a transfer student versus because you went right after high school, right?
Yeah, I started there. I had planned to go to App State. My whole family had gone to Carolina. My pop, my uncle, my aunt, most of my cousins, and I was like, I would just like to go somewhere different. And I lived closest to Carolina of anybody in my family. Most of my family's in the eastern part of the state. And I was like, I kind of want to go further than 40 minutes from my mom's house.
Mhm.
And so I was going to go to App. I like was going to be in this residential college or doing something. I don't remember. And my papa was like, why don't you just apply to Carolina? Just apply and we'll just, you don't have to go. Just put it in the application in case you change your mind. I was like, I'm not going to change my mind, but whatever. So it was like the day the application was due. I wrote my essay in like 20 minutes and sent it in and ended up getting in. I was like, you know what? Maybe this is a sign. Maybe I should go. And so then I went and of course I loved it, but I did start there even though I hadn't planned on it.
I also applied and got accepted to App State all those years ago.
Yeah, go
in 2010.
Bears.
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful campus up there. I had a lot of friends who had a lot of good times up there, but at the end of the day, it's just really far away.
Yeah.
And like, there's not so much to do up there, respectfully.
No, my younger cousin ended up going there, funny enough, but I felt the same way. I think the main reason that I ended up going to Carolina, other than maybe perhaps what I thought was maybe fate at that moment, was I had also become accustomed to being able to get pretty much whatever I wanted at any time of day. Like around here, you can do that.
Yeah.
And the thought of being not able to do that actually caused me a lot of anxiety. I was like, what if I need something and I can't get it? Because not everything is open all the time. And there aren't enough places to choose from that could be open all the time. And I was like, I just don't know that I could live like that, which is kind of makes me sound like a little bit of a diva. Perhaps I am. But yeah, that was my final decision maker. It is beautiful, but
yeah.
wasn't
And I
for me.
mean, like I went to Carolina because like I applied to Carolina and to State. I was planning on going to State. Like I wanted to stay local because I was planning to work at my dad's restaurant to finish off, putting myself through college, and ended up going to Carolina because they offered me the money. And
Yeah.
it ended up being a good decision, made a
Yeah.
lot of good friends and had some good times and, learned something.
Yeah. I watched some good basketball and
Yeah.
saw a beautiful campus.
Yeah, it's funny to think about like how like if the listeners don't know, like I'm a big Carolina Hurricanes fan. I go to a lot of the games with my family, and like those games, especially like the playoff games, are like super crazy and rowdy. But like I don't think I had ever seen like a sports environment quite like those like Canes playoff games. in any other event ever, except for like the Carolina Duke game at like the Dean Dome. Just
Yeah.
is so buck wild.
It was so fun. So fun. I think my sophomore year I did Carolina Fever. It was basically you go to a bunch of other random sporting events, you get points, and then you
Yeah.
get higher up in the lottery. And so my sophomore year I had phase one, which means you're the lowest level tickets to the Duke game. And that was like so thrilling. But it's like, even though you have great tickets, like you still have to be there like a bajillion hours early and hang out
Mhm.
outside all day. But it was worth it. It was definitely worth
Absolutely.
it. Yeah. Well, now that we've said what we have to say about Carolina, I guess how we initially met. We've gone from 2020 back. Let's go from 2020 forward. After school, we were both like, well, what do we do now?
Yeah.
I was working part-time still for the university. I worked on their social media team. I was their social media intern. And so they kept me on part-time after graduation. We had enough credits so we didn't have to go back, but we didn't really have a graduation. And then I got hired part-time at a podcast production startup, and eventually that went full-time. But I found recently, when I had to re-download GroupMe for school, because for some reason GroupMe is still the only messaging application that a university can use. But when I had to re-download it, I found our old GroupMe messages where we were talking about this. Like, what are you going to do after graduation? Oh, I'm going to do this. Well, I don't know. I think I'm going to go to the restaurant and hang out and
Yeah.
look for something.
Yeah. Like I had an internship lined up that got canceled because of COVID.
Yeah.
And so I was in a bit of a weird spot. Like I did work at the restaurant for basically all of 2020 and into 2021, putting food into go boxes. And I was able to get like a little bit of work from the university as well. Like my connections in the English department, they started a podcast like in that summer. It was called the Southern Futures Podcast. And we were really kind of exploring like Southern culture through like, art and literature. And it ended up being like a really, really good podcast and great experience all the same. But yeah, I remember that group me as well. And it was very much just like, it was like a bittersweetness because like, we had become like fast friends at Carolina
Yeah, we
Connections.
had. It was sweet, but I mean, it's sad. I think one of the reasons that we became friends, I think our personalities are similar but very different. I think that works really well. But I
Right.
also think when you're put in relatively high stress, kind of high stakes situations and you have to figure things out on the fly, like you really have to be able to trust each other to make sure that things when they're live are as they're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we built our relationship pretty strong there. But I think when we were also trying to like pivot and be able to do all of the news show completely remote, and we were able to figure out how to do that successfully, I think we were like, okay, we had to be around each other all the time, but we were around each other all the time and we were doing a really good job. So
Yeah.
I think that made our friendship pretty strong.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to double click on that, it's like, I think one of the things that like really marks our relationship is that it's not just that we get along well, it's that we work really well together. It's like,
Yeah.
we are able to rely on each other for things. And also, I think it's just they're like, we both hold ourselves to pretty like high standards, right? Like,
Sure. Yes.
I am like at this point in my life where, yeah, is everything I'm going to do going to be like, a chart topping success? Maybe not, but I'm going to treat everything like that. And I think that that's kind of the way that you work as well.
Exactly. I mean, I like things to be done the way that I like them to be done, and the way that I like them to be done is right. I think that's
Exactly.
pretty much all there is to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that you encounter a lot of people in your life that you have to work with who maybe don't hold those same standards or values. So it's when you do have somebody that you maybe do have to work with and you align in that way, it's easy to stick around, as we have for, I guess, the last 5 years now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, every kitchen job I ever had, you had both of those types. People who you had to work with because they were the only people available. And, you certainly, you got through the day with them. But then there was also the people that, you really enjoyed working with because of how they work, both in terms of like their character and the quality of work. And, those are the people that keep you around.
Yeah, and bonus points if they have a really fun personality and they're just really cool and interesting too, you
Oh,
know.
absolutely. I mean, that's why you're a 10 out of 10.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Right back at you. Maybe an 11, who knows. Um, but when I read those messages back to the group me, I was like, oh, it's sweet to watch us be like, oh, what are we gonna do? And I worked at this startup. I was the first employee um, for I guess about a year, almost a year, when the founder was like, "We really need somebody to come on and edit. Like, we need somebody to edit. We don't have enough bandwidth to just do this ourselves." And I was like, "Well, boy, do I know a guy for that." And then I look at those messages and they're like, well, yeah, I'll let you know if I find anything for you. I'll keep in touch. And by God, if I couldn't keep my promise, I was like, what a treat. I
It
love
came at
when it's
like
not just empty things.
right, and it came at like the perfect time too, because the podcast that I was doing with UNC had kind of ended its run. The host was moving on and doing other things. At that point in time, was tired of working at the restaurant, and so I accepted a news job, doing production for like a major local news production. It was a fun job that I really enjoyed. It was a really good crew and I liked the work a lot, but I was working like 25 hours a week and I was working from 4 in the morning till 10 in the morning.
And
Uh,
that station notoriously does not pay people at that level very well either. So also for pennies.
right. And so I got the offer for that job right around the time I started getting like part-time and like kind of like contract work from the podcast startup. And so it was nice because I knew that eventually I'm going to treat these jobs like I treat everything else. I'm going to work hard and I'm going to, really make myself invaluable. And eventually one of these is going to turn into a better opportunity. And that's exactly what happened. Like I did kind of both of those at the same time for about
Mm-hmm.
6 months. And then later that same year, I got an offer to come on full time at the podcast studio. And honestly, like, I had a great time doing it. Like, I feel like we did a lot of really good work there.
I do too. I think that one of the things that it was fun about that job, and I think will be fun about this job as we grow, is that you have the opportunity to learn about like so much random like shit. I'm gonna say it now. We're gonna be a cursing podcast. We're allowed to curse on the
That's good.
show, but you got to learn about so much random shit like you have no business knowing about. Like I have produced at this point in my life 5 different podcasts on birth and multiple education videos on it. At this point, give me the gloves, where's the baby? I'm getting it because like I can figure it out. I have no business knowing that much information. I just don't, but I do now. And I think that was one of the things that was so fun is getting to work on so many different kinds of projects. I think that's ultimately what drew me to news is getting to learn about random things was fun. And so I think this kind of, filled that same sort of role. And I think we were able to make a lot of really, really cool and really interesting things.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's funny to think about because I think about, the podcast that I was listening to like at the time. That was kind of before I got into like the more niche podcasts that I end up listening to now. But like at that time I was listening to like, like ologies and like, all these sort of like, true crime sorts of things.
Love.
And it was the same sort of thing where, do I need to know everything about like different kinds of fungus or do I need to know everything about the science of airplanes? No. Am I ever going to use it? Probably not, but it's still
But
cool to
is it
learn
cool?
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we worked on so many different things, like you're talking about, birthing and, child and infant health, maternal wellness, child
Wetlands we did for
psychology.
a while too.
Say what?
Wetlands.
Wetlands, yeah.
Yeah.
Learned a lot about wetland science. ArcGIS, that's something that I never thought I'd know anything about.
Nope. I still don't, to be quite honest. I think some of those things I did not understand, but we did
Yeah.
do it.
It's a bit above my pay grade, so I'll admit. Oh gosh, we did like hospitals. We did, I mean, all sorts of like startup
Soccer.
and
That was
soccer.
fun
Yeah,
too. Lots of soccer, which I did not really. I mean, I knew ball goes in net, but beyond that, not much. And so that was fun.
yeah. I mean, let me ask you this: like, obviously, you were talking about how you did a lot of like this, like child, infant, maternal health podcasts. Was
Mhm.
there like a topic that maybe it's the same one, but if there's a different one, like was there something that you ended up finding like way more interesting than you thought it would be just working through the podcasts?
Um, I don't know. There's so many different ones. I will say that I learned a lot about sleeping practices for babies and safe sleep, and learned that my mom absolutely was queen of unsafe sleep. Like, did everything that they said with me and my brother, what you were not supposed to do. And I did tell them that. I was like, well, guys, it is an absolute miracle that me and my brother are still here, because according to your suggestions and guidelines, we absolutely should not be. That was a pretty funny one. Just, I mean, everything. I knew nothing about that before, so everything was a new topic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like scrolling through some of these like files of just stuff we used to work on. I do think that like the child psychology podcasts ended up being something that like really, really just like stuck with me. And I don't have children, so it's not like it
Right.
directly applies. But I think just psychology is such an interesting field, and the things that they were talking about are things that like I can just apply to my own life or my own interactions with other people. Like we're all
Exactly.
just big kids deep down, right?
At the end of the day, when all is said and done, we're just kids that have grown to be bigger. That's
Yeah,
so
I mean,
true.
I'll tell you, the first 30 years of childhood are certainly the hardest.
Yeah. Well, I talked to my mom about that. I guess it was probably about when I bought my house. This was like 2 years ago. I was like, I should not be buying a house. I feel like a child. Like that, I have no business having a mortgage. Children are not supposed to have those. And she was like, you will feel like that forever. Like if you're like me, you will feel like you're too young for this all the time, forever.
Hmm.
And I think there's something sweet about that, but at the same time, I'm like, when is it gonna feel like I really know what I'm doing? In a lot of different senses, but I will say, in this context, this is one of the things in my life where I do feel like I do know what I'm doing. If it's a podcast or podcast related or media related, I do know what I'm doing, and I think that's why I enjoy it so much.
It's also super interesting because we obviously have industry expertise. We've done a ton of work. Like we've made hundreds and thousands of podcasts over the last
Literally
5 years.
thousands of them, and being in like such a small place really got to establish our way of doing things and the way that is most efficient and makes most sense to us. So like we didn't ever have to follow what somebody else's guidelines were. We got to say, all right, this is how we do it. And that was really exciting. And we're doing that again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because, I think when I was hired, I was brought on to be sort of the expert on audio, and whether or not I was at the time is certainly up for debate. But I think that by the end of it all, it is what I am now. Like there's
Absolutely.
no question that I feel like 100% confident when I'm talking to people about what I do and why I do it when it comes to editing podcasts.
Yeah, well, I must say, I've always thought of you as the expert. So,
Oh,
I
right
think you're
back at you, pal.
certainly. Thank you. I think you're certainly the expert now. More of an expert than you were before, but you were definitely an expert back then.
The other interesting thing, though, is that, we talked about a lot of like different styles of podcasts that we've worked on in the past. I think we would be remiss to not mention that the podcast startup that we were working for before had like a big niche in like business content. We did
Yeah,
so much content with, business owners and startup founders,
entrepreneurs, and yeah,
entrepreneurs, venture capitalists. And
yeah.
so we're in such a unique position, as we're getting our own business up off the ground, because we don't have to go through like this crazy crash course in starting a business
That is
because
true.
we've been learning about it nonstop for 5 years, 4 years,
That's
something
actually a
like that.
very good point, because I didn't really think about it that way. But I guess when you hear so many founders' stories and funder stories and like all of these different stories of how people grow or scale or sell, etc., like you listen to so much of that, you start to think that it becomes almost common sense. And then you realize, wait, actually, that was really beneficial to what I want in my life. And I would have never picked that podcast out for myself necessarily, because I didn't have plans of that at the time. But
Hmm.
good gosh, did it help?
It's nice because it gives me hope that maybe someday I'll need to use all this information I learned about aviation science and fungus from these different podcasts. And I'm going to have it pulled up and ready to go when the time is right.
Maybe it'll be an apocalyptic situation and you're on an island and the only thing to eat on the island is mushrooms. And then you find a plane, but it's not quite right. And you have to fix it. And then that's how you survive. Maybe that'll happen.
The icing on the cake will be when there's a murder on the island and then we have to solve it.
Yes. Oh no. It was Amber on the beach with the airplane
candlestick
shift. Oh man. Well, I think that I am glad that we don't have to necessarily put everything that we've learned so far in podcasting into practice in real life, because there are some things I don't want to play soccer. That sounds exhausting, or deliver a baby necessarily, even though if somebody's on a plane and needs to give birth, I'm there and I'm ready. But,
and I have a lot of respect for people who work in hospitals. I have no desire to work in one.
No, but building a company and starting a podcast, that's something we can do.
Absolutely. We got you covered. This has been a lot of fun chatting about all this stuff today. Really, we've kind of found like a nice place to wrap it up for today, because I know that we have a lot more to talk about with our time at the startup and kind of like how we got from there to here. And I think that's, a great place to kind of tee it up for next time.
Yeah, I will say that we've talked in this episode about the last 6 years, and it took up, 30, 40 minutes. We're about to do the same next episode with the last 6 months. So
right.
We'll see you then.
That's it for this episode of The Dive. Thanks for being here. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at wavestream.media. And if you want a podcast like this one, or totally not like this one, visit our website, wavestream.media. Talk to you soon.